You know, when it comes to gaming, some releases create a cultural divide, like The Last of Us Part 2, where there's a chasm between opinions, and hearing one from the other side just sparks a rage in people. Then there's practically harmony across the video game space when something like Baldur's Gate 3 or Gollum comes out, where everyone's on the same page. We all can agree a game is fantastic or abysmal. Sometimes, and this is purely opinionated, I disagree with the majority of people, where everyone loves Far Cry 3 or Metal Gear Rising, and I just cannot stand them. But never before in my life have I seen a video game get so undeservingly dogpiled on like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It is insane. The utter uproar and backlash online just destroying this game, calling it one of the worst releases in recent history, and claiming it tarnishes a beloved franchise, and I, frankly, do not get it. I played the closed beta, and I played it when it released, and I did not understand what the problem was. So join me as I replay it and try to get to the bottom of what could have possibly gotten people so riled up in this spoiler review of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now, whenever I see a tidal wave of hatred towards a game, the usual suspect is performance. Sure, almost every game has some redeeming quality that'll make the experience worth it to some people, but what does that matter if you can't play the game at all? That was one of Gollum's biggest problems, and the good name of Cyberpunk 2077 is still utterly soiled in some people's minds because of the state of that game on release. So is that Suicide Squad's problem? I don't know. Let's ask the Suicide Squad.
Nice production on the graphics.
Oh, okay, I guess not. Let's get a less biased look, though. There were a few technical issues I found, like how because this is a live service game, I had to create a new offline profile to restart completely clean. However, I really don't believe that was a factor in why people hate this game, since I doubt anyone dogging on it had any desire to play it a second time. The way they zoomed in here, I guess somehow prevented the game from rendering the close-up model of the Superman statue. There's some graphical pop-ins, the Green Lantern boss fight tanked my frame rate, and there are just some model glitches, like Superman's cape, the shattered display case, and how Waller's call on the LexCorp screen goes out of sync with the audio.
We cannot explain.
When you're done visiting the science fair, get your asses back here.
But let's be fair here, that's about 3 bad, inexcusable problems. You could argue the frame rate was due to the hardware I played it on, the model issues are just straight bugs, but that is 3 in 10 hours of story gameplay, and I'd say 15 to 20 hours of gameplay total, because I had no issues I can remember in the side objectives. You heard it from the shark's mouth itself, this game looks great graphically, and I'm really surprised this game doesn't run worse than it does, and frankly, I looked at the old script for this review back when I first played this game, and I had even less to say about it then, which means yes, technically, this game does run incrementally worse than it did on release. But I've seen games perform way worse that people still praise and ignore the problems. I think it's safe to say that the technical performance is not the issue of this game. But what about the performances by the actors? How are the characters in this game? Because characters can make or break a game. They can be spectacular, forgettable, or so hilariously bad that they drag the game down with them.
Lisa.
So where does Suicide Squad land on that spectrum? Honestly, towards the good side. Not spectacular, not particularly memorable, but I wouldn't say forgettable. I really like the way they've depicted the Justice League. I rarely watch the cartoon, so my knowledge on these two is very limited, but from what I've seen, Jon Stewart and Wonder Woman are written really well. Wonder Woman especially when compared to some of her lackluster appearances in recent media. She's got a great design, and call me crazy, but I think it would be a great idea if she managed to get her own video game. It'd be pretty easy too. I actually made what you're watching right now. I hopped on Blender, made her model, and threw together this concept trailer for what the game would look like in about like half an hour or so. And Monolith isn't real, don't look into that. I never would have chosen Nolan North to play Superman. I just wouldn't think to cast him, but damn, did he knock it out of the park, and really captures that good quality corniness you love to see in his hologram. He's so good, I frankly wish he talked more often throughout the game. And after his tragic passing, it really hits hard hearing Kevin Conroy's voice again, doing a bang-up job per usual, especially hearing that iconic line again.
I became vengeance. I became the night. I became that man.
The Flash still has the problem he's had for at least a decade, where they just take characteristics from Wally West and give them to Barry, but he's still written and performed really well, and he has the benefit of being shown both before and after getting brainwashed. It's really great to see him still joking and optimistic when 99% of the population has been killed, saying he's gonna fix John and the rest of the league, and how he still saves the squad even after they cut his thumb off. And then he just becomes a complete menace under Brainiac. This is one of the biggest dickheads I have ever seen in my life. Ripping Lex out of his power suit, ripping the heart out of its Lex suit, pulling up a recliner just for the fun of it. This guy is evil and incredibly entertaining to watch. But what about the squad themselves? Well, Boomer sniffs his balls, so they got it in one, and it's so cool to see him using his experience fighting the Flash to find him when he's invisible. Deadshot is absolutely part of the Suicide Squad. Hack. I don't understand why on earth Poison Ivy is here other than elemental abilities and gameplay, although that sequence of the squad debating whether or not they put the bomb in her head when Boomer already did was hilarious. And even though they really have not given me any reason to see him as a villain, he's as innocent as can be, I do appreciate seeing King Shark here, especially with how funny he can be.
Dude probably uses offshores.
Offshores?
He's a great addition. And, oh, hold on, real quick, I gotta see who played him and give him a shout out because he is... What the fuck? Lex is great, the voice actor is perfect for the character, and I love seeing him be such a hater to Superman so much that he's dreamed about where he's gonna kill him for years. And lastly, for better or for worse, the Margot Robbification of Harley Quinn persists. Since Harley was created so recently, there's so far only really been two ways you can write her. You could do Harley the sidekick or the Harley who stopped being a sidekick, and I do really like both versions. I can't really complain about Harley being independent in this series when we've already had 4 games of sidekick Harley, but DC has been so hell-bent on using this character recently that, ironically, just like the character she's broken away from, she's become incredibly oversaturated, and I'm tired of seeing this version of the character. I need a break, especially since this version can be hard to write without making her annoying, and while this adaptation is one of those that writes her well, alongside Margot Robbie's depictions, and you can't really have a Suicide Squad without her, I am just a little sick of seeing her. So the characters can range from non-existent to stellar. I can't really see that being the problem, so what about what they actually do? How about the story? Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a complete crock, but who gives a damn anyway? People still love the Suicide Squad, despite the fact that I've only ever seen one version of them that makes sense as a concept. The entire point is to have the villains substitute for the heroes as a necessity, which means it doesn't make sense to risk having them do things the superheroes would do anyway. James Gunn is the only person I've ever seen who managed to make a sensible story by having Argus be the bad guys instead of a super CIA. The reason they chose the Squad is because Argus's hands are dirty and they need superhumans to cover their tracks, but the only ones who will cover them are those with no moral compass and something in it for them. And in this game, it kinda still doesn't make any sense because the logical plot is there, but they don't do it because Amanda Waller is a staple to this team. Argus is completely irrelevant here. First off, the bombs in their heads are an empty threat. Why would she kill a superhuman and significantly lower the entire planet's chances of survival? Secondly, this is the apocalypse. They're in it for themselves. Survival should be motivation enough. And them breaking out of Arkham because it's run down because the world is ending and becoming a squad and killing the Justice League because it's the only way to survive this suicide mission of stopping Brainiac makes sense on its own. You could still include Lex and Waller if you want to by having them be hunkered down in their own bases trying to survive, and the squad teams up with both of them for Lex's technology and intelligence and Argus's manpower. And when you look at the survival rate of this game, this mission isn't very suicidal. Nobody, not even Toyman, dies. And he is the most kill-offable character I've ever seen. There's not even a Slipknot. The only person that bites it is Luthor, but the other Luthor, the one that does nothing and croaks. So this story was fucked from Jump Street, like even just as a starting point, but I've seen plenty of stories and actors turn bad concepts into gold. How does this game perform in this disadvantaged situation? Well, it's not the greatest. It's like a runner finishing in the last half of competitors in a marathon. He lost, but it's pretty impressive that he managed to run a marathon in flip-flops. I do like being dropped into an ongoing plot that's monumental enough to be its own game, where Flash is still himself and trying to save his partners. And I really like how you see in the Batman experience and with Wonder Woman after Flash is beaten when she forges the kryptonite into a shield instead of a sword, the writing is on the wall. These heroes will never be able to stop each other because they cannot hurt people as righteous as them. They don't deserve what needs to be done. And as protectors over warriors, they won't be able to finish the job. That's why the squad matters. The affiliations with Argus and Waller aren't, but playing as the villains is necessary for this plot and what justifies its existence. I do want to give credit where credit is due though, and say that while I'm not a fan of how unnecessarily involved Argus is, at least they used that to launch an interesting idea of the Suicide Squad rebelling against them and giving them the agency to go after the creator of the bombs to get them disabled. It does feel a bit counterintuitive that no one playing this game is going to want to rebel, considering Waller's objective is the one on the front of the box, and even then, this is what really irritates me, you can't just do it. Like a mirage in the desert, you think the game just gave you a choice when you see 2 main mission objectives on the map. Kill Green Lantern and find Lex to disable your bomb. And obviously, yeah, I'm gonna do what the game is advertised as and go after Green Lantern. But when you show up to do it, you literally just can't. Granted, the reason why is because the Suicide Squad stands no chance against Green Lantern without Yellow Lantern power, which we'll get to, but you could have fixed it by just only putting 1 objective on the screen instead of 2. And to shovel more crap on the pile, the lead up to that mission, right after you suit up and officially don the name of the Suicide Squad, your first step to murdering these gods is to do Amanda Waller's chores. One of which, much later down the line, is to be killed by a nuclear missile landing right over the city that she is still in. Anyways, the rest of the story is fine. I like it enough. It's simple. Kill the Justice League, and eventually defeat Brainiac. I do like the beats that lead up to it, finding the Batcave, having to adapt your attacks after Superman no-sells a chunk of kryptonite in the chest, turning some ideas on their head like gold kryptonite being completely synthesized instead of a natural element that gets replicated. It's good enough. What I especially love about the story, though, is the way they justify this band of complete jobbers being the ones to kill Brainiac as them being the margin for error. It's hilarious, but it makes sense, as all of the big threats you'd think of have already been either neutralized or planned for. The last problem with the story that bothers me is the multiverse stuff, and it's not because of the multiverse, because it's not shoehorned in. Yeah, that's how they justify having 13 Brainiacs to sustain a live service model, but it fits in with the single-player base story. You don't get a major sense like you've been left hanging at the end of the game, mainly because after you kill one Brainiac, the threat of the others feels like it could be a day job. My problem with the multiversal stuff is that Brainiac's planet Kolu was destroyed, and he wants to make his new version a multiversal constant, which I do really like. That's good for a Suicide Squad story, but there is someone in this game who fits that way better. Who better to combat an alien whose home was destroyed than the alien he fights who had to find a new home because the same thing happened to his? Fans have been begging for a Rocksteady Superman game, myself included. How is this not the plot to that? Not even a video game, a Superman comic, movie, show. He's a Superman villain. If anyone could relate to wanting to bring back their home planet, it's Superman. This was made for him, but they chose to give it to the next best fit for the live service angle. The last cons about this story are things like how Lex survives falling like an entire building's height in a metal container, no problem. Some things just happen with no reason for happening when they do, like Wonder Woman being in the doo-doo Batcave, and Green Lantern's shield around the ship doesn't go down when he dies. Those could be seen as problems, and after going through this game's story, I could see why that could be the thing that caused a complete internet-wide meltdown, but it shouldn't. Some people who had a tantrum over this game really need just a little more self-awareness. The reason why Green Lantern's shield didn't go down when they killed him is because they needed a reason to add the scene where King Shark gets the Green Lantern ring, suit and all. And as I'm sure many have pointed out, that is one of the stupidest scenes I have ever bore witness to in my life. What game do you think you're playing? By no stretch of the imagination could you possibly say that this game wants you to take it seriously. And frankly, if you do, you're kind of being a wet blanket. Just because the Arkham games are serious doesn't mean this one has to be. That's how comic books work. That's how a schizophrenic hero who works for Egyptian gods is in the same universe as a cosmic troll who keeps an infinity stone between his toes. Styles are going to clash, and you cannot engage one character's story with the expectations that it'll have the same tone as the others. It's trying to be funny, and in my opinion, they do a great job.
Isn't Deadshot supposed to be white?
And one of the reasons why it's funny is that juxtaposition. It knows it's in the same universe as Arkham, and it reflects that well. That is one foreboding-ass skull ship. They're losers who give us a civilian perspective, like being in a building so impressive like the Hall of Justice that you feel out of place, or what it's like on the ground during the Brainiac invasion, something I've only ever seen before in the very start of Injustice 2. Every time Superman shows up on screen, you're almost filled with dread because you're fully aware you're punching out of your weight class. So yeah, the story could be the problem for people, but frankly, if that's the case and the reason is because you're taking the game too seriously, that's just unfair. So next up is the gameplay, and I want to start with the tutorial because it is incredibly odd. So they do that thing that the Uncharted games do, where at the very start you're in a situation about halfway, 2/3 of the way through, and eventually you come back to it. Well, the reason that works in those games is because it's not a playground for you to learn how to play the game, there aren't any training wheels, you don't understand what's happening at all, so you're very intrigued to see how our heroes got there, you've already played the other games so you care about the character, and you can actually point out later in the story where that tutorial takes place. None of that applies here. I guess you could like them if you're fans of them, but these versions specifically, even Harley because she's practically new, have no merit to the players. I do not know where this tutorial takes place in the timeline of events. There's no music outside of the action except this eerie song that sounds like it's from Silent Hill. It creates one too many cold opens alongside the Arkham initiation, train scene, and Green Lantern appearance. It would have fit better if it took place right before that Lantern scene. And if you're like me and are part of the exact target audience for this game, you look at that ship and clock it as Brainiac immediately. No mystery, no excitement, no intrigue, just an obvious goal you move towards. This game does have a rough start, but that's why you have to look at the whole game, because that is not indicative of the rest of the gameplay. This game has some mediocre, alright, and best movement I've seen in a video game. It's not fit for every game, but I think Doom Eternal might be the last time I've seen movement as smooth as Captain Boomerang's. Harleys can be pretty rough at first, it's probably the least fun to traverse the map with, and it can be difficult to get the hang of, but once you know what you're doing and swinging around the map shooting Terminauts, it's so much fun. I feel like this game has the perfect amount of verticality for a 16:9 aspect ratio. Like, you're moving upwards just enough for the limited height of the screen to not be uncomfortable while still not being practically absent. What I especially love about the gameplay and movement in particular is the jungle gym of Metropolis. If the Arkham vs. Gotham City is a dingy, crime-ridden, populated sewer that never stopped raining, Metropolis should be a perfect city. And buddy, this map, in both visuals and design, is literally golden. It does look a little weak at night. To keep the comparison, it'd be like seeing Gotham's bright neon lights in the day. And frankly, it could have solved that problem the same way every other game set in Gotham does, and that's just not having a day cycle, but the eye candy of seeing the sunlight hit this skyline totally makes up for it. The gameplay does have some problems. The missions where you defend the incredibly slow trucks are awful. Powered enemies are fine, but weird plot lies, and this game looks like modded Risk of Rain. I do not know what half of these symbols on the screen mean, but you honestly don't have to. This game really does cater to the min-maxing audience, people who play live services and live off loot drops, but you can also completely ignore it. The gameplay is so fast-paced, and every drop is automatically added to your inventory, and all gear for the other Suicide Squad members are auto-equipped to the best stat-wise, so you really can just ignore every system you want to in this game. I hate live service mechanics just as much as the next guy, but when you can completely opt out, I don't understand how that can be what drives people away from this game. I will fully acknowledge that it was a bad call to have Captain Boomerang primarily use guns, same with King Shark and his hooks, but let's be real, it totally makes sense for Harley and Deadshot to use guns, and I actually think it would be a hindrance if the other two didn't. Harley and Deadshot play pretty much the way you'd expect them to and have pretty similar movesets. I do not have the mental capacity to learn two other characters with completely different movesets and mobility. Frequently jumping between these characters would be so jarring trying to remember what each move does. It's already a bit jarring that they don't all have the same traversal fundamentals. They have different button combinations you need to hit. And if I had to rewire my brain every time I switch to them and get my ass beat until the right inputs are reburned into my brain, I wouldn't have made it 2 hours in. And hey, at least you get to use different characters. I seem to recall another game centered around a ragtag group of 4 supers punching out of their weight class that let you play as exactly one of them. And the last thing I want to talk about relates to the gameplay and stands the biggest chance of being what caused this meltdown, and that's the boss fights. This one I do see and relate to the complaints that they're underwhelming. First off, I don't think these fights are as creative as they could be. Flash is fine, making tornadoes, but Green Lantern's constructs have far and away the most creative potential. They could literally be anything at all, and they just stuck to weaponry. Just Gatling guns, missiles, mines, and helicopters. There's no mid-fight cutscenes to hype up the drama like in God of War and Spider-Man, which would really be interesting with Superman and Flash knocking you into different parts of the city. While they do have cutscenes afterwards, they don't die in cutscenes, they just flop over all limp-like. And Brainiac's fight is a literal replica of the Flash. How do you do that? How do you plan a Brainiac fight and come up with nothing better than doing what you already did? They are way too easy too. And I'm not saying in a way where that's a problem that could be fixed by changing the difficulty. No, they're way too easy in proportion to the base enemies running around. Some late game combat arenas downed me and I needed to be revived, sometimes multiple times, and I only ever got downed about 2 times in boss fights and they were on separate occasions. The actual gameplay and moments they create are fun. I cannot express how happy I was when I realized they made Flash hard to keep track of, and how once I saw him, he'd run off half a second later. Batman scared the hell out of me. The idea of using your fears head on and taking down the Master of Fear using Fear Toxin, fear, that was cool. But I just wish they had more impact, and I really feel like every problem I had with these fights could be fixed by spending just a bit more time on them. You know what would be a fight with spectacle? Aquaman. Not only would I love to see what this character is like in the Arkhamverse, but dodging tidal waves and sea monsters on the Metropolis shore would be incredible. In saying that though, I have to be self-aware like I said earlier. This is Suicide Squad. Aquaman has had more than his fair share of rough times and would absolutely be the tutorial boss and a complete jobber considering how unserious and reductive this game is in its comedy. Newsflash, asshole! I knew that was the problem the entire time! Aquaman would be a jobber because everyone in this game is a jobber. That's what this game is. That's what the Suicide Squad is. It's why Peacemaker says Green Arrow is a brony and says Aquaman has sex with fish. That is the whole point. It's a joke. The Justice League are joked about at their expense. They're ridiculed at their expense. They're pissed on, some of them literally, and Batman fans can't take it. They've had it too good for too long, and they don't know how to handle their GOAT taking an L. Oh no, your favorite character got dunked on? I have no idea what that's like. And I know this is the case because I have the receipts. I can show you what people said when this released. And as a Superman fan, I'm especially pissed because he's been Batman's punching bag for years now. Thank you, Frank Miller. Oh, this game sucks because the squad can't beat the League. Well, Batman can't beat Superman. People argue about Superman and Goku fighting because they're in the same weight class, but there's a reason no one compares Batman and Goku. You wanna know what Batman versus Superman would really look like? But no, people want to glaze Batman by giving him prep time and contingency plans. But you want to know how the Suicide Squad beats the League and bodies Batman? Prep time! They beat the League by prepping kryptonite bullets and Yellow Lantern energy. That's exactly what Batman does! They use his own tactic against him, his own plot armor against him, and people can't handle it. They know their GOAT is a fraud. They say, yeah, let's all agree this isn't the canon ending. Batman would never get brainwashed by Brainiac. He didn't deserve this death. Brother, you do not know ball. You could argue the Brainiac point. I disagree. He's a League member, they fight together, they win or go down together. He knows Superman is their best chance, he's gonna risk himself to save him. And dude, do you realize how much Batman hates himself? If he saw what he did, even with the knowledge he was brainwashed, he'd probably save Harley the Bullet and do it himself so it never happens again. And what a poetic way for this character to go out. The guy who uses darkness and violence to his advantage being overcome by that darkness and finally being taken out because he created victims of his unleashed potential. This guy does not deserve a good send-off. And that's another thing, Harley killing him makes sense. In her eyes, he killed the love of her life. And while she may be over him now and hate him, his death still tormented her life. He disrespected her over and over. She brings up how he said in one of the old games that she never was that bright. He beats the piss out of her. They foreshadowed it at the start of the game. It's built up and everyone's pissed when she gets her lick back. It's like Joel, he killed someone to save someone else, and in the end, it's the person closest to his victim that takes him out. She gets the last laugh. And even to soften the blow, he's maniacally evil, but people still can't take it. They say this game ruins Batman's ending and how he just threw his life away just to come back out. Dude, this guy gave up his entire life. He became an animal, an entity of vigilantism. There's no other option that makes sense to be the thing that finally gives him hope again than the literal symbol of hope. Seeing a new age of heroes is the only thing I can see inspiring him to come back. It reinforces the world's finest team up that we've never seen in this franchise. And more so, they say this ruins the Arkham series entirely. It tarnishes those games' legacy, disrespects it. First of all, those games are good and influential. Some of them are even great, but they're not all that you're making it out to be. And secondly, really, this game is disrespectful. The game that replicates the Predator encounters you played, but this time through the perspective of those being hunted, where you get hit by a vent takedown. The game with man-sized vents with their covers ripped off. The game where you run into explosive gel and hear his cape flap as he grapples across the rafters. Where he tricks you with the voice synthesizer. The game that almost replicates to a T the environments from 2009. The game with the new Batcave filled with the old suits and an AR training area. The one with gameplay calling back to the last set piece of Arkham Knight. The one where Batman stalks you out in the open world. The game with the whole level dedicated to preserving the history of this franchise. Yeah, and it doesn't care about the legacy of this series. And the cherry on top of this hate-flavored cake is when some of this game's haters, including a major video game news outlet, decided that the best thing they could do was weaponize Kevin Conroy's death. Here's what I'll say about this. Kevin Conroy is the best Batman voice performance I've ever seen. He voiced the character since 1992, he clearly enjoyed it. There had to be projects he didn't do because he didn't want to and wasn't obligated to. And I think that because Mark Hamill is choosing to never voice the Joker again because he can't do it with Kevin Conroy. I doubt he would have done this game if he didn't want to. And choosing to say that one of his last performances as the Caped Crusader was wasted in this game, or that this game, and I quote, shit on Kevin Conroy's legacy instead of saying that we're lucky to see him play this character again one last time and be happy that he got to do it and have fun with this character again, all because you don't like this game, really is in poor taste. So is this game perfect? No, far from it. I have plenty of problems with it, but none that warrant this level of hatred that it's a meme. I can understand not liking this game, but if you hate it because of how they treated a character, I feel like you're missing the forest for the trees. Yeah, they dogged on just about every character here. That's what the Suicide Squad is. And I want to say, after completely finishing the script, I went back and listened to some reviews when the game came out just to see if I could be swayed and if I really was crazy. And while I wasn't swayed, they weren't just echo chambers. They were negative, but fair. They make points I can't argue with, but those points don't hold as much weight with me as they do with them. I'll leave the links to those reviews in the description. Go check them out if you're interested. I'm giving Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a 6 out of 10, which if you don't remember, is the same score that I gave Batman Arkham Asylum. Why? Because they're overall pretty similar in quality, Kill the Justice League being a bit more stretched out, and they both do great things I love to see, but had some of the weakest, almost baffling endings I've ever seen. And we don't have to agree. That's fine. I understand a lot of people are gonna disagree with me, but I came in with an open mind, thought the opening was incredibly lame with its tutorial and ending mission screens, but was still won over. I genuinely do not think this is a bad video game. But wait, hold on. Before you go, just remember that I liked these games, and I don't like these games. So I'm still a credible reviewer.